If you don't feel accepted and you feel as though you belong, whether it be within your family or your social group or even at work, loneliness itself degrades mental health, but on a molecular level.
Make sure that your life and the actions you take and the things that you are doing are to make you happy, to give you the best quality of love. Because I spent a life trying to please everybody and I was miserable.
We'd like to officially welcome everyone to our very first episode as Evolve Ventures.
Oh, my Lanta.
Very exciting. So, as you know by now, if you are a full-time listener, my name's Emilia Smith.
And I am Bianca Thomas.
But if you're just joining us now, welcome, welcome. So, we really hope that you were able to listen to our last episode, because if you are new to the show, or if you're new to what we are doing right now, which is going through a rebrand, our last episode number 88, it was about why we're rebranding and why Evolve Ventures. So I think it's just really exciting to get a little bit of the behind the scenes peek, but for anyone who wants a little bit more of that, jump back to that episode. So today for episode 89, we are going to be diving into societal's expectations of love. And what you can expect out of this episode is approximately 20 minutes. We're going to dive through story. We're going to go into some of our lessons through society's expectations of love. And then at the end, you can look out for some cool things that we believe will help to wrap up this episode so that you can take away big golden nuggets in your pocket for wherever you go. So without further ado, let's jump into it.
All right. So for those of you who are long-term listeners, this story won't be new to you, or at least some of the components will not be new. To our new listeners, welcome. And I'm grateful to get to share some of my life and some of my experience with you. So I grew up in a very old school Middle Eastern family. And with that came very rigid, very strongly held beliefs about what marriage is supposed to be, beliefs about what relationships are supposed to be, what love is supposed to be. And no one in my family was shy about expressing this. It was a conversation that was had all the time. And we were basically informed. You either conform to this or you will not be part of this family. And that really shook me, because growing up, or at least when I was old enough to start dating, so around 16, I didn't fit the mold. The first person I ever dated didn't fit the Middle Eastern background, ideology, family mold that I was basically instilled with from a very young age. And that caused a lot of chaos within my family. Then he and I break up, and I come to really start understanding, I think I'm gay. I've always had weird feelings about girls. Whenever there were like girls around, or whenever I had female friends, like I never knew how to relate to them. I never knew how to talk to them. I always felt weird and uncomfortable. And I came to understand it's because I was gay or bisexual, or whatever term you want to use. And growing up, hearing all of those stories, all of those lessons, all of those very rigidly held beliefs from my family, I grew really scared. I was terrified of my family finding out what I actually was and who I actually was. And I started developing beliefs about myself that I'm not good enough, that I'm never going to be loved, that I'm never going to be enough for anybody, because I don't fit the mold of my family in any regard, not just in this one. So when my family did eventually find out, it was chaos. It was nothing short of chaos. I basically had to leave my house because they didn't ask me to leave, but things at home got so bad that I had to. I moved in with my ex, who I had only known for about a month at that time. And it wasn't something I wanted to do. I know there's that joke that like lesbians move in together after 2 weeks and they get married after a month. And there's like that running joke, but that wasn't why it happened. It was for dire circumstances. And we move in together, and it wasn't a good relationship. And I ended up leaving her. But all of that, I really believe, came from the pressure that was put on me from the society around me, from the people around me telling me that love is supposed to be this way. And if you do not fit it, then you are not good enough, that you are bad, that if you are gay, you're going to hell, and that there's something wrong with you and you're disgusting. And those are the messages I was told when at a very young age. And it really shaped my identity and what I believed about myself, and ultimately what I ended up doing.
So, B, I think that one of the things for me, even just hearing that story, it doesn't matter how many times you say it, it breaks my heart, because I can resonate with that too. And I think that anyone listening to this episode, I would encourage you to kind of reflect on your role in this world, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are in a relationship, whether you are, someone that's a part of a team, a part of a family, or even a teenager, wherever you are in life in terms of your own sexuality, your own role and power and influence and whatnot. I want you to realize that where you are in life right now, there's people that look up to you, and there's likely people in some way, shape, or form who you've told something to, that they've taken that word as gospel. And they've likely implemented different choices or taken different choices in their life that has shaped them to be who they are. And to this day, I think we all have memories, and maybe not all of them so pretty, looking back at that one person that we thought had our best interest at heart because of their inherent relationship with us. But as we reflect on it, we kind of feel as though they didn't necessarily understand some of the pain of maybe those guardrails that they tried to put, or maybe the boxes that they tried to put us in. I remember being in high school at one point. I think I was a freshman. And I remember at one time I was dating, and at one point I was dating at the time what he identified as an African American. And I remember being so afraid of sharing that with family and with the individuals who at the time were in my circle, because unfortunately at the time, their level of awareness of that culture and of that identity at the time was not really positive. And it wasn't something that was really celebratory and accepting. And as a Caucasian female, it's still really uncomfortable to talk about that. But I think it's important because at the end of the day, we all have these boxes that we likely grew up in. How we should love, how we shouldn't love, what we should, be exposed to, what we shouldn't. And I think the only thing that can come of that is this feeling, B, that you described, that I would say, now sitting here having coached people all over the world and seeing the compound effect of that feeling of suppression of who they truly are, of who they want to become, like that testing of the waters of the different, sexualities, or of the different ways of loving, whether that be even with themselves or whoever it is, that feeling of suppression is what it becomes such an exile. And we start to kind of push down this part of ourselves that we want to explore. And the lack of exploration, I've seen the compound effect of that really negatively impacting people's mental health. And, when you even start to look at the stats, when you think of it, if you don't feel accepted and you feel as though you belong, whether it be within your family or your social group or even at work, right? Loneliness itself degrades mental health, but on a molecular level. Studies show that loneliness is just as bad as smoking and as bad as alcoholism, which smoking, by the way, globally claims 6 million lives per year.
Wow.
So now, huge. So now, if you look at just the stats on that and you start to reflect on your own experiences and you start to say, wow, I've really felt alone because of how society or how I thought or how I was raised by society, whether it be my small family, whether it be the school system, whether it be the cultural norms that I'm, playing into, or whether it be even on a macro scale, my city, my state, my tribe, whatever you want to call it. I didn't fit into that. Or in their eyes, if I was a certain way, I wouldn't belong here. That will inherently cause extreme loneliness. And B, I know you and I have both experienced that, feeling like the outcast, feeling like you cannot be yourself and you can't even try. You can't even explore what that even looks like. And how many of us just grow up walking straight out of the womb, knowing exactly who we are? Zero. So, I think that from my perspective, it still pains me every single day at the fact that every single individual in one way, shape, or form is going through this. And I know that some people don't make it out of that. Some people don't have the courage to put in systems, put in social groups, put in things in place so that they can help themselves get out of what we call that toxicity. So B, if you could bring one thing forward in this episode to our listeners, regardless of who they are, what would you say is the one thing that has helped you get outside of that box? And that truly, when you start to look at those stats, saved your life?
Before I go into that, something that you just said that really, I don't know if you just noticed it in my somatic expression, something that you just said really just shook me. And it was the fact that there are so many people who take their lives every single year because they love someone or they are a certain way, and the people in their environment and the people around them do not accept them for it. And they are shamed and ostracized and genuinely treated horribly for it, to the point where they decide that taking their own life is a better option than being who they are.
I definitely saw it. I saw it shift. And to pull in the data, it's 10.5 per 100,000 in the population. So pretty much five to 15,000 people die by suicide every single year globally. So that's about 10.5% of every 100,000 of the population.
And so many of them are part of the LGBTQ community because their families literally shame them to such a substantial degree, to where they have nobody and they have nothing and they have nowhere to turn. And so many of them are adolescents. It breaks my heart. And in all honesty, it pisses me off. And I was part of that. There were times where I genuinely thought I'd be better off dead, because dealing with the fact that my family is so ashamed of me, to where my parents once told me that they almost moved out of state to avoid having to be around the rest of my family because they couldn't allow anyone to look them in the eye because of who I loved. That's not okay. It's just not. And now, granted, me and my family are working on a lot of our things, but there's so many people out there who do not have that opportunity. They're not working on it with their family. Their family wants nothing to do with them because they're dating someone who is Black, or they're dating someone who's Hispanic or Latino or Latina or whatever else it might be. And this is so prevalent in the Middle Eastern community too, where like dating anyone outside the culture is so ridiculed. You are shamed and guilted, and the environment is so toxic because of their rigid, conformed beliefs about what love is and is not supposed to be. We did an IG live today. This will be a couple days ago. And one thing that I referenced is this psychological framework. And I can't remember what the name of the framework is called, but ultimately there's
theory?
That's a part of it, but that's not the name of like the actual
the framework,
like the actual framework. That's like a subset of it. But ultimately our environment is made up of multiple different components. One of them is a macrocosm, and that's ultimately like the large scale influences. So like the country you're in, the state that you're in, the just like the large scale environment around you, like the government, just things like that. Then there's the microcosm. The microcosm are the closest components to you. So like your family, your school, your teachers, your friends, the things that have a direct influence on you and over you. And every single day, without us even knowing it, we are being influenced by these macrocosms and these microcosms. Some are very intentional, like my family and the people in my community telling me those things. Some are unintentional. For example, if you are brought up in, what's an example? Saudi Arabia, you're going to have a very different belief structure than someone who's brought up in Miami, literally just because of where you're born.
Yeah.
And so all of these external influences are making an impact on what we believe and what we do and what we think, and therefore what we feel. And something that we asked in the IG live is, are your behaviors, are your thoughts, and are your emotions, are they conscious? Are they because you chose to do it based on what you actively have chosen to believe? Or is it conditioned because you've been taught that this is the right approach and that this is what you are supposed to believe and think and do and say and feel? And I would guarantee that the majority of people are not acting based on conscious action, but on conditioned patterns.
100%. And I'm reading a book right now that is challenging the classical view of emotions. And we'll go into that in another episode. And certainly we'll go into that in our live virtual event that we host every last Friday of the month. And but it revolves around this idea that emotions aren't necessarily just something that come out of us that we have no agency over, but rather emotions are constructed by us in how we interpret our world based on what you had said, your cultural beliefs and where you grew up and so many other environmental factors. And so as we wrap up this episode, I want to bring in the fact that this is so critical. And we're talking about this, in the month of February, because February is very much known as the month of love because of the anchor holiday of Valentine's Day, which globally is highly commercialized. But we want to get into the nitty-gritty of those aspects of love and how love and societal expectations and those boxes that we talked about can really impact us. So I see this as an extraordinary opportunity for business leaders around the world and leaders and families and team members to see this as another opportunity to really develop high levels of acceptance. And this is kind of, in a way, a cry for help, but also an allegiance that I want to offer to other people out there in the community, global community, of really accepting people for who they are and who they're working through, meaning like they might not necessarily be acting in a way that truly is who they aspire to be, because they're working through this struggle, this resistance between who they grew up becoming and who they like want to be, right? So like you grew up with this belief system and now you're trying to figure out who you are on the other side of actually having a choice. There was a global study that was done that said about 49% of people contribute their happiness, the greatest source of their happiness, to their relationship, their partnership, those that are in positive, deeply meaningful, highly supportive relationships. And that means on the flip side of that, there's a huge opportunity for happiness to be had. And so I'm calling on all the business leaders and all the people around the world who have exposure to this episode to set the frameworks in the teams that you have, in the families that you have, in the social frameworks that you have, to really start to build more of that acceptance, that trust, and that growth. And let that be an opportunity for each one of you to learn to love the evolution of the human that you see in front of you, and give that human a space to grow into, because right where they are right now might not be where they meant to be and where they chose to be. And so just, bringing that full circle even to people like business leaders, right? If you can provide a space where people like Bianca, like myself, anyone who might feel this way, that they might be subject to societal expectations, which by the way is everyone. Even just speaking to the millennial generation right now, 83% will feel more loyal to your business, to your mission, to what you're doing in the world. And so I want to just encourage people to offer more of an opportunity to grow and to evolve their understanding of love. So, if you liked this episode, tune into some of our other episodes where we have, episode number 66, the power of choice, 62, relationships and how they shape you, number 36, the power of choice, and number 50, which is, how to find your tribe, because finding someone and a group of people that support you in the way that you choose to be, that is so, so essential to your growth.
I just want to correct you. Number 36 is the power of courage, not the power of choice. It's the power of courage.
Thank you.
2 that I wrote down is number 43, the discomfort of being yourself. And number 34, why your environment predicts your success. So we kind of came out swinging with this episode. I didn't know that this was how we were going to take this, but I'm glad this was the approach that we took. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a business leader, whether you are a teacher, whatever your role, this impacts you and everybody around you. You cannot have a team that feels as though they are being suppressed. And if you are a business leader, if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, the people around you are directly impacted by you and the precedent that you set and the standard that you set and the role that you play. And if they follow the leader, so make sure that you're setting a good example. Make sure that you are having an environment, like Emilia said, where people like me, where people like her, where everybody feels like they belong, because it will only benefit you.
So to wrap up our episodes moving forward, which is something we didn't do in our former episodes necessarily to this degree, to the oomph, to the batting level that we're having right now, is to give you the top 3 takeaways that we believe are most important for you from a brain perspective, hinting to that elite brain performance that we're going to be pulling into each episode, is the top 3 takeaways to every single episode, so that you can walk away with a full summarization of this episode. And moving forward, you can, share this episode if, for example, you have someone that could really benefit from this dialogue, from this conversation. So, B, what would you say is your number 1 for the top 3?
Number 1 for me is that no matter what you do, no matter who you are, there is always going to be someone, something, somewhere that is telling you that you are wrong, that is telling you that they have a specific belief about the way you should be and who you should love and what you should do. Everybody has an opinion, and it doesn't mean it's right. At the end of the day, Emilia gave stats. 51%, I think, right? Because you said 49% correlated their happiness. So you still have 51%. Exactly. Your happiness is predicated on you, on what you do, not on what anyone else tells you to do. Mm-hmm. So make sure that your life and the actions you take and the things that you are doing are to make you happy, to give you the best quality of love. Because I spent a life trying to please everybody, and I was miserable. Mm-hmm. And when I finally chose myself is the first time I ever truly felt happy.
Beautiful. So this is number 2, my top takeaway. And this is the second of 3, would be to, based off of the plethora of experiences that I not only personally have, but also as a coach, as a friend, as a lover, as, every single role that I have is this. If you experience, not if, because it will happen, but when you experience a generational should, meaning you should do this, you must be this way. Mm-hmm. Any sort of domineering or dominating effect, I want to invite everyone, and I'm not going to tell you you should. I want to invite you into the questioning part of your nature. You can question how your emotions, how you feel about when someone tells you you should be doing X, you should love Y, you should hate these people, you should XYZ, fill in the blank. Please, I invite you to question that, because we have what I'm calling, and what we'll reference to in future episodes, generational trauma. And that's being passed down from generations to generations based on the belief systems, based on the values, based on the aspirations of specific groups. And it's all over the place. All of us, are prey to this and are victims of this, and don't have to be. I want to insert the agency and invite you to really reflect and to question specifically any should that happens to come your way. And then for the third, we believe, Bianca and I said at the beginning of this episode, ultimately, if there was one thing out of all of these top 3 takeaways that you can take away with you as an area to expand your consciousness, it would be this: love can evolve. Love will evolve, but it takes you. And so to leave you with that, we want to encourage you to be on the lookout for our next episode, which is the science of love, going into the chemicals, the chemistry, what we know on the science level, bringing some fun, crunchy data for you and applying that to your life. And Bianca, what do we have the listeners to look forward to this month?
So Emilia mentioned this in the beginning, but Out of the Mud is the last Friday of every single month. This month, we are talking about evolving your definition of love. What we're going to do is take all of the episodes, all of the data, all of the information that we gather, and put it into a nice, concise lesson, framework, ideology for you to take away, with some incredible actionable items, actionable things that you can actually take with you and apply to your life. Emilia and I have been to so many seminars and so many events where we leave thinking, I didn't get anything from that. Or, yeah, that's a cool theory, but what do I actually do with that? How do I actually take this and apply it? And Emilia and I hated that. We hated feeling like we wasted our time, wasted our money, wasted a night. So this is why we are so passionate about Out of the Mud and about what we bring, because every single event, we have had every attendee tell us how amazing it was and how they're applying everything that they took from that in their lives. So, how to evolve your definition of love. As Emilia said, love is evolving. Your brain is constantly evolving. And we want to help you consciously evolve your life as you venture into your future.
That being said, thank you everyone so much for joining us in this discussion. Please, like you'll hear in the outro, please share this with someone that you deeply care about, as it is a timely conversation. So much love to you all, and thanks for tuning in.
See you soon. Bye.